Now we're going to start applying some of the things we've already learned with the 5 principles for success. Success is a formula. Success is a way of being and a way of interacting with the world around you to start creating the results that you want. And it's actually quite a simple step-by-step formula. It's not rocket science. So the 5 principles of success are laid out for you on page 15. So on page 15 there, we've got 5 components. 5 components. There's only 5 components that if you actively integrate in your thinking and in your actions, and you do it this way from today onwards, your results are going to grow exponentially. So step number 1 in the 5 principles of success is to know your outcome. Now, knowing your outcome sounds fairly simple. It's a little bit more complex than that, and there's several components in it, but that we are going to teach you through this entire training. And the components of knowing your outcome is setting goals. So, do you set goals? Have you actively set goals this year? Have you actively set goals in the past? Have you set goals and not achieved those goals? Oh, and have you set goals and achieved some of them? So people don't have a consistency in how they're doing the processes that they're doing. And by the way, a vast proportion of the population don't set goals at all. They don't even do this process by starting with knowing their outcome. There's an old saying, and I claim it to be an old Scottish saying, and I'm not sure it is, but we'll say it's an old Scottish saying. If you don't know where you're going, you'll end up somewhere else. When people are adrift with no real outcomes, then there's no driving force for their unconscious behaviour. Their unconscious behaviour, 90% of their functioning is driven unconsciously. But they haven't created any direction for that 90% of their being. And 10%'s just putting out fires and being reactive, I would imagine. So creating an outcome and knowing your outcome, and it needs to be a very specific outcome. Now, the way we get a specific outcome, and we will teach you this later on in this video series, we use the SMART acronym. And I'm sure you've heard variations of goal setting models and possibly the SMART goal setting model, but we use SMART, which is specific, measurable, as of now, realistic and timed. Don't worry, I will take you through exactly how to do that process in a way that I can almost guarantee you'll have never heard before later on in this video series. So you create your outcome, but once you've written your SMART goal, you still don't truly know your outcome, because there's another step within this. You need to know whether or not you believe in it. You see, if you don't believe in it, then there's doubt. We've got a saying in NLP that anything less than 100% support is sabotage. So if you have 80% belief in your goal, but 20% doubt, and say, for instance, that 20% doubt you applied a huge amount of energy to, as in fear, anxiety, sadness, that energy and that focus will probably work towards creating that outcome. Oh, and here's an interesting thing about the unconscious mind that you need to pay attention when you're setting your goals. The unconscious mind doesn't process negatives. If I said to you, don't think of a blue tree, what did you just do? You thought of a blue tree, didn't you? So when you create your goal and your outcome, you need to make sure it's towards only the things that you want. And you need to look inside of self when you read that goal outcome and understand, where's your belief at? Do you believe in that goal or not? If you don't, you need to do something about it. You need to create incremental outcomes that are on the way to that goal that you do believe in. We will go into a lot of detail about our goal setting model, and about how to get that real concise clarity. But for the time being, You need to know your outcome. Once you've got that, the next important step, and this is the bit that a lot of people miss, is you need to take action. You need to do something today. You need to do something right now that is aligned with and towards that goal and outcome. See, once you've got a goal and outcome, it's easy to reverse engineer the process. When you know where you're going, it's easy to work out what's the first step on the road to that goal or outcome. You need to hold yourself accountable to take that action. Now, an interesting thing happens when you take action. That's movement. You start to get and generate feedback. Feedback leads us into step number 3. Step number 3 is to have sensory acuity. Now, the important word in that is sensory, not hallucinatory. So you need to have sensory acuity. You need to look at that feedback and work out what's real and what's not, what's aligned with your goal and outcome and what isn't, what's taking you closer to your goal and outcome and what's taking you further away. With sensory acuity, you can start to take that feedback, assimilate that feedback, and create a change in the action steps that you're taking so that you start working towards your goal. Now, during that create a change, we go into step 4 of the 5 principles of success, and that is have behavioral flexibility. Behavioral flexibility is a willingness to do it differently. It's a willingness to assimilate the feedback that you're getting and work out what can you do differently and what are you willing to do differently, and then apply that change and take that action. Behavioral flexibility you can have purely by being at cause and being in control of your projections and your perceptions. So having learnt the principles of cause and effect and perception as projection, you're now able to access a behavioral flexibility that's far more flexible than it probably was before you learnt those components. So that behavioral flexibility is the willingness to do it differently. Einstein said the insanity is doing the same thing in the same way, yet expecting a different result, which is a clear definition. If you hit your head on a brick wall, then you're going to hurt your head. And if you continue to hit your head on that brick wall, there's no point blaming the wall. You're going to hurt your head. That's going to be the outcome. Behavioral flexibility is important at this point because it keeps the process running now. It's a cyclical based process that never stops until you get your goal or outcome. Now, step 5 is an overriding principle. Step 5 is to always operate from a physiology and psychology of excellence. Now, whether in business or whether in your personal life, how many times have you heard somebody, or maybe you've done it, where you've heard somebody say, right, I'm going to do X, I suppose. Better get on with it. It's probably no point, it will go horribly wrong, but needs to be done. Yeah? That's not a physiology and psychology of excellence. That's not going to create results. It'll create a result, but I'm sure it won't be the positive outcome that you're looking to achieve. A physiology and psychology of excellence is having a positive focus, having a positive belief, holding on to and marshalling your resources to ensure you maintain that positive focus and positive belief. It's physiologically putting motivation and energy and passion into your goals and your outcomes. Understanding what's the end result, for what purpose, what are you going to get from it, and what makes it worthwhile for you. Now, not every outcome has a very clearly defined, worthwhile, fabulous reason for you to do it. I need to do my end of year cash book for my tax return. It's not something that I have a great pleasure in doing. I don't go, oh, fabulous, I've got to do my cash book today. You know, it's just a part of business. But I take myself and understand the outcome of doing that. The outcome of doing that is I put in my tax return on time, i.e. the government doesn't get upset and angry with me. And also I then can see my earnings for the year and all of my effort that's gone into creating those earnings, which usually puts a smile on my face. So the end outcome, there is a way to find a physiology and psychology of excellence in everything. And that comes from just truly understanding and knowing the purpose and seeing the value in the purpose so that you can just get on and do it. With this process, it's a cycle. So you create your outcome and then you go into step 2, take action. And then you follow up with step 3, have sensory acuity, take the feedback, assimilate the feedback, learn the wisdom that you needed to learn, and apply that wisdom by using for your behavioural flexibility, whilst always maintaining a physiology and psychology of excellence. Once you've done that one cycle through, you then take action. And then you have sensory acuity. And then you have behavioural flexibility. And then you take action. And then you have sensory acuity and behavioural flexibility. Now you can see how this cycle just keeps you rolling onwards and onwards, creating success after success until eventually you end up at the final magnificent outcome that you set in the first place. It's entrepreneurs and successful people in the world never stop. They don't fail. It was an interesting interview that once was held with Edison. So Thomas Edison was asked by a reporter, how can you bear it? How can you bear to fail so many times? You've done hundreds of experiments and none of them have worked. Now Thomas Edison truly looked at him with a sort of dumbfounded look on his face, where he thought, hey, what do you mean? He said, well, you've done all these experiments and all of them have failed. He says, none of my experiments have failed. None of them have failed. He says, every time I've done an experiment, I've eliminated a thing that doesn't work, which takes me closer to the ultimate thing that will work. He was applying these 5 principles of success. He was applying them on an ongoing basis with an unshakable belief in the outcome that he was going to create. So, what I'd like you to do now is step number 1, know your outcome. So before you move on to the next video, I'd like you to sit down and write for yourself a goal. Write several goals. Write 20 goals. But make sure you write a goal for yourself, and let's make a goal about what you're going to achieve from having gone through this NLP practitioner training online. What's the ultimate outcome that you're going to get? What's going to come into your life? What are you going to be capable of doing once you've finished all of the components of this training, understood them, and are applying them day to day in your life? How is your life going to change? What is that outcome? And because we're creating an outcome, we may as well make it big. Make it big. What's the best thing that could happen to you that would mean that the decision to do this online NLP practitioner training was the most important decision that you ever made? It was the most valuable decision that you ever made. So we'll finish this video now, and I want you to sit down and write down your outcome and your goal. Later on in this video series, I'm going to help you craft that into the perfect goal. But right now, write it down. Now, if you're unsure, do a mind dump. Now, what's a mind dump? A mind dump is write down on a piece of A4 paper or several pieces of A4 paper everything you could ever conceive that you would want. Just let it all out. It doesn't matter if it's ridiculous, it doesn't matter if it's nonsense, it doesn't matter if you don't believe in it. This is the first step. Write it out onto a piece of paper and let it be anything. You leave it for a day, and then you revisit it, go through the list, and you'll see things that you think, oh no, I don't really want that. Or, oh yeah, well, that would be nice, but it doesn't need to be a Ferrari. You know, if it was a late model car, I'd be more than happy. Yeah. So write down, allow yourself that free flow of information that isn't held back or restricted by you wondering how on earth am I going to do it. Don't worry about the how yet. Just get your outcome out onto the paper so that you can, from that, pick the most important thing and turn it into and craft it into your goal for the process of this training and all that you're going to learn.